Well, history shows the perils of interfering with economic data. Greece faked its deficit numbers for years, leading to a painful public debt crisis in the early 2010s. China has been accused of exaggerating its growth numbers for years. Argentina systematically understated its inflation figures. That eventually led to even higher borrowing costs, as investors simply lost confidence in the official numbers. Amy O'Hara used to be in charge of the Center for Administrative Records Research and Applications at the U.S. Census Bureau. She's now the director of Georgetown's Federal Statistical Research Data Center. She joins me now. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So there have been revisions in the last several months. As there have been revisions in the past, is there any evidence that the BLS methodology with these numbers was rigged for potential political reasons, as the president continues to claim? Is there any statistical evidence of that?
There's no evidence of that. There are so many systems in place to ensure the integrity of that information, the data inputs, the methods, the review protocols before data are released. Those are all very locked down. And the commissioner leads that effort so that all of those civil servants get to do their work without interference. And so it would be virtually impossible to get in there and tip the scale in the favor of the data going one way or another. There are revisions in these data and in lots of other government statistics. Sometimes they go up, sometimes they go down, but the systems are in place to make sure that there is transparency in those methods so that we can trust them.
We're hearing economic experts warning of this firing, and the broader attack on the BLS sets a dangerous precedent. Janet Yellen, former chair of the Federal Reserve, of course, said, quote, "This is the kind of thing you would expect only to see in a banana republic." I wonder what this means for confidence in U.S. economic numbers going forward, because people bet a lot of money on those numbers every day on the financial markets, but they also make economic and business decisions based on those numbers in part.
I think the concerns are about what a new commissioner would do. Would they alter those protocols? Would they suppress or delay results that don't align with what the administration expected? All of those actions could really demolish public trust and reduce the utility of that data for those data users and the decision makers.
So let me ask you this. If you're an investor or a CEO of a company who's trying to make decisions based on numbers, but numbers that are actually real, and if the next head of the BLS is someone who's willing to tell the president what he wants to hear as opposed to what's true, are there alternatives? Are there non-government alternatives to get reliable indicators as the state of the U.S. economy?
There are lots of different signals out there that provide information about how the economy is going, what the job market is doing, what the talent pipeline looks like. All of those signals exist, but the value of the federal statistics is that there were transparent methods so that you knew that what you were getting was going to be a reliable series, so that you'd be able to look at that and understand the trend. In addition to those federal statistics, it is important to grab all of that other information that exists from the business community and to pull that together to get a more complete picture. But none of those stand alone as a replacement for reliable federal statistics. You just can't have that reliable trend line.
I mean, what does it mean for someone like you who worked in this position, or the now former head of the BLS? I mean, for years, these have been apolitical jobs, right? I mean, they might be political appointments at the top, but the nature of the work is such that, it seems to me, you want to get the numbers right. I mean, I haven't heard accusations of political manipulation of these numbers before. Does that seep in more broadly, where folks are less likely or a little bit scared of sending negative information up the chain?
I think it has to have a chilling effect on the people that are in these agencies. They're very mission driven. As I said, there are lots of systems, lots of protocols, and these are people who want to follow the rules to make sure that they have that public trust. So they're putting information out there that people will use so that it's reliable. The challenge with a lot of these indicators is that you're balancing timeliness and accuracy, which is why they come out with revisions. So I think that the people on the inside are going to continue doing their work as long as they're able to do it without interference.
Yeah, one would argue that doing the revisions is to get the numbers more right, right, over time. Amy O'Hara, thanks so much for joining.
Thank you.